Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Coach's Corner, where three certified scaling up coaches from PetraCoach spend an hour answering your questions and giving you our perspective on the world of business. Joining today is Eric Frank, Mark Comiso, and Marshall Martin. We're going to start off with some introductions to tell you a little bit about each coach, their family, and where they live. Can I get you to start us off, Mr. Mark?
Thank you very much, Eric. Yeah, Mark Comiso here, out on the West Coast, based in San Francisco. Family here, got a lovely wife, Andrea, who's another coach as well. So two coaches in one family. That's scary. And have two amazing daughters, Paige, who's 21, and on a cross-country, standout cross-country runner at San Diego State University, and little Lucy, who's rearing to take over the world when she grows up too. So, thanks for having me on here, Eric. It's great to be here with you too. Marshall, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm certainly glad to be here. I love these Coaches' Corners and hearing what's going on inside businesses. But Marshall Martin, I live just south of Nashville in a city called Brentwood, Tennessee. My lovely wife, Erin, have been married nearly 24 years. I applaud her for that. I have a 21-year-old daughter who attends the University of Mississippi, studying for a doctorate in physical therapy, and it just so happens today she's at Centennial Medical Center getting in some internships. So I'm certainly proud of her and the difference that she wants to make in the world to healthcare and physical therapy. So as I've been a coach here at PetraCoach for about 4 years, and formerly C-level executive in business. So thanks for having me here today, and to you, Eric.
All right, thank you, Marshall. My name is Eric Frank. I am in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I'm married to my beautiful wife, Rebecca, who is a nurse for Humana. And we have two small kids, Elijah, who is 6, and Cecilia, who is 2, and out of diapers, I might add. As we were coming on this morning, we were having a little conversation about diapers, but we'll save that for later. So we have a lot of people registered today, both on Facebook and through Zoom, which we're really excited about. I think the count was up to 500 as we were getting kicked off. And we have a few questions that are already coming in. Looks like Tim from Cincinnati, Ohio has a question. It says, because of COVID, we have had to lay off a lot of our team, and we are now rebuilding our sales division. Do you have any advice on how to build a sales organization from the ground up? Why don't we start with you, Marshall, since you're our resident sales guru on here, for your perspective?
Well, I've always told the companies we work with that oftentimes with enough revenue, kind of our smaller problems go away. So we certainly, a viable business is substantiated by the ability to have a business model that produces revenue. And sales is certainly important, but when you think about sales, I'll use the word focus. We have to have focus. So if we're building a sales organization from the ground up, and we think about the concept of what it is that we're selling, who it's for that we're selling to, value delivered, why would they buy it? And then lastly, why buy from us? So in building a sales organization from the ground up, we have to have a narrow focus around our targeted segment in which we believe give us the highest possible probability in a successful outcome. Now, if you're building from the ground up post-COVID, we don't have a lot of time to go build out the greatest strategies in the world, but we do have to narrow down, because getting sales professionals up and running and trained can take a while as well. So I would probably look inward, Eric, first, organically, at the existing relationships we already have. And then I would look at, through those relationships, which of those are representative of those external that we should be approaching, and then narrow down that list, get our people up and running, and go close some deals.
Very nice. Always important to be closing those deals. Mark, you have anything to add about that from any of the companies that you're working with and what they're doing in their sales organizations right now?
Yeah, one of the things is I think about that, a great question, right? I think this is all of us going through COVID is causing us to look at our organizations from the ground up in every area. Sales is certainly an important one. One thing that I've always communicated and found useful in my companies in the past is to, always be recruiting, right? So you should be looking at, and ahead of all of this, you should have had, who's our dream team for my sales group, right? I'm always encouraging my members to look at, if you had unlimited opportunities in sales and unlimited budget to be able to hire the best people in the world, who's the dream team? And are you kind of touching bases with those people? What's going on? They could be people that are competitors, salespeople that are working for competitors. They could be a salesperson that's, working for a vendor that you just really admire, the approach that they take, their, whatever it is about them. So, as you look at how are we going to go and start from quote unquote the ground up, I'd encourage organizations to always be looking even ahead of this. If you have been doing that, then this is where you start doing that again, because a lot of those people will come, are coming available. This is a time when, given the circumstances, businesses are, transitioning, should we say. And so there's lots of people that are looking for great opportunities to move forward, and you might be able to snag a dream team member at this time. So, some of it is being prepared, and then some of it is taking advantage of the opportunities that exist right now because of the situation.
So Mark, would you say instead of ABC, it's ABR, always be recruiting?
Yeah, I thought about that. As I said it, but yes, always be recruiting when it comes to hiring people.
And then as far as CEO, do you have any experience share on guidance on the best way they could possibly be recruiting right now on a shoestring budget? Yeah,
I always, every organization has different, abilities to pay or not, right? So you say a shoestring, what shoestring to one person might not be to another. Oftentimes, what I find is that, and as we well know, that compensation isn't usually the biggest draw. And so as a CEO is what I would communicate is find out, much like Marshall was saying, is understand your audience. Find out what's motivating those people. Yes, salespeople are oftentimes driven by, a number, but it could be also what impact can they have in our organization. Maybe it's somebody's working for a giant company and now they have an opportunity to influence, the direction of the sales organization where they couldn't in that giant company. And that's more valuable to them. So, as a CEO, I'd say, understand your audience as best you can and what motivates them. If it's money, then see if you have to do that. But I tend to find that that's not the highest priority.
Awesome. Thank you. And it looks like we have a follow-up question from Johnny in Cincinnati. He says, we currently pay a base salary and 10% of the net profit on a sale. Marshall, do you have any recommendations for a better sales compensation model that maybe could look more at activities than outcomes?
Yeah, so what I would say is there's not a one-size-fits-all sales compensation model. I will also tell you that sales professionals are really good about following the compensation plan. So the compensation plan needs to be aligned with what makes the business successful and the sales professional successful. And there's usually good plans between a fixed component of salary that doesn't have the sales professional stressed out about making enough money to live on. And then there's typically a variable component of the model, which is often split between a variable compensation in regards to commissions, and then lastly, one in regards to a bonus structure. So you reverse engineer a sales comp plan to determine what the market is driving for a sales professional that's going to help your business be successful. And you typically back into what you think earnings, what you call OTE, on-track earnings are. Then you reverse engineer yourself back into the structure of the model. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And if you want to know if you get it right or not, the best way to test your sales comp model is roll it out, and sales professionals are awesome about showing you where it's either really good or where there's holes in it that they can take advantage of. And I say that in a lighthearted manner. You don't want to use the sales area as a place to save money in regards to your expenses, because a great sales professional is worth a lot to the business.
And to follow up to that, kind of along what Mark was saying, do you have any guidance or experience share on how to get the right sales professionals on the bus?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you talk about, quote, always be recruiting. I never limited myself to always be recruiting sales professionals in places where sales professionals hung out. Because what I look for is there's people every day in different areas of businesses that are not in a selling function that is amazing. I'll give you an example. About 20 plus years ago, an MIS MBA, Management Information Systems, MBA in business, and this friend of mine worked for Gold Bond in Charlotte, North Carolina, and had actually even been working in HR. And she called me and said, my position has been eliminated. Can you help me? And I said, sure. Let me tell you what you are and what you're not. I said, you are actually a sales engineer. And she says, what do you mean? I said, your background in understanding management information systems and your MBA has positioned you to be able to articulate what a software platform can do for a business in a way that other people can't pull it together. You'd have to have two positions to do so. And to this day, she's probably 10 years into her career at Underwriters Laboratories in a selling function. So don't always lock yourself into the sales world to find sales professionals. Find people with the capabilities of informing and influencing others to show what they can get in return for the money spent.
That's great. So maybe it's ABRE, always be recruiting everywhere.
Well, I stop when someone comes to my house. About a year ago, an AT&T professional came to my house. And what I do is I'll open the door and stand on the front porch, and I start asking them questions to understand if they've been sales methodology training, or if you have a Sonic restaurant in your area. If you notice at Sonic, if you order a hamburger, they'll ask you if you'd like French fries with it. If you say yes to French fries, they'll ask you if you want a drink. They keep asking till you say no. And so I test someone in their training and their personality and their willingness to ask for the close.
Now, is Sonic on a triathlete's diet, Marshall?
If you go out and spend 6 or 8 hours on any given Saturday, you could probably cheat by on it in an effort to get to the next good meal. Okay,
I just like their ice.
I want to be that cash register person that Marshall's in front of, because do you want a milkshake? Yes. Do you want French fries? Yes. Do you want the animal? Yes. The order is going to be an $800 order. That's great.
I challenge any of you to test the Sonic model and see how that works. But yeah, selling is it's a behavior more so than training.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I was gonna say, Marshall, your acronym is really, really long, right? Always be selling, but not in. It was really long in there. I did want to throw on top of that I could not agree with you more, Marshall. Is that I think, and I've told people in my organizations in the past, everybody's a salesperson, because at the end of the day, we're communicating what we do, right? So it could be somebody, to your point, it doesn't have to be somebody that has the quote unquote sales title. That selling is something that isn't a bad thing. It's communicating to the world who and what we are, and that's a great thing. And that can happen from somebody who is on out in front welcoming people to anybody in the organization. So you can find salespeople anywhere.
Great, thank you, Mark. All right, we got one from the Silicon Valley here. This is a good one. William from Silicon Valley, California. My company is currently entertaining an investment from private equity. My question are, does Petra coach any private equity-backed businesses? And what questions should I be asking the PE firm to see if they are a good fit? Now, Mark, you work with a bunch of PE companies. I know, Marshall, you do as well. Why don't we throw this to both of you with Mark starting us off?
Sure. To answer the question for William, William, we at Petra Coach, we do coach private equity organizations, both the private equity groups and their portfolio companies. So we work with everybody in the chain, if you will. I guess what I would throw out there in looking at a good match is, first and foremost, dive into what the values are of that private equity organization. One of the things that we believe in strongly, both at Petra Coach and in the scaling up process, is that when you look at the foundational elements of any organization, yours, William, and potentially the private equity group that you might work with, is how do your values match up? Because at the end of the day, that's the core of who and what we are. And, I would tell you that, if you get closer matches on your values, what's important to your organization and what's important to the private equity folks as far as an organizational foundation, that will matter more than, hey, where do you want to go? How do you want to do it? What return do you want to get? Those things are important. but if you don't have a foundation of common understanding and common vision, then it will make it much harder to get to any goals or any objectives that you might set. So, look at the people and what matters to them first, and then take it from there and build from there. It's a good filter.
Great, thank you. Marshall, how about to you? Same question.
Yeah, I think culture and alignment of the vision. Also, when entertaining that, is what is your stance towards control? And what I mean is, oftentimes when companies take on private equity investment, if you have a strong desire to be stay in control, if you will, I know control is a strong word, then you want to, there are different private equity approaches where that some come in and they put their own operator in with strong control, but the model has moved more so to really that passive kind of out of the way. It's an investment and supportive, how the decision making is going to be made. And then again, is there a strategic alignment with what the business originally set out for, or is this a transactional play in the spirit of dollars? And therefore, that usually comes into play about what people want in regards to those relationships.
Great, thank you. So William is responding with smiley face emojis. So he's happy with that. And then he says, once I take the PE investment, how will the firm want to change my business? Mark, what do you think about that? What kind of changes will a firm usually want to put in place once they make that investment?
What I'd say is that there's no, much like Marshall said, there's no one size fits all, right? It's not that, you get private equity money and this is what they are going to do. I totally agree with Marshall, that, you have to be, when you're looking at partners and partners putting money in, you have to understand as a founder or the CEO of a company that they are going to want to have some control over the money they put in and the returns they expect for that money. That's their job, right? Their job is to get a return on the money that they're giving you. That's why they're giving it to you. But they're going to put some control mechanisms in. Some organizations, some private equity organizations will come in and say, hey, we want to bring in a new CEO. That is sometimes what happened. Other times they will put in, milestones or guide rails that say, hey, as long as we're going here and within this range, it's all you. If we get outside that range, we may have something different happen. There's a number of things that they could do. I would say that that's a really good question to ask even before you determine who the right fit is all right, if we were to go here, what are the types of things that you've done with other portfolio companies you've invested in? And what's your anticipation of, doing it with our organization? So you can know that ahead of time.
Great. Could you guys give some examples of some private equity companies that you've worked with and the types of changes potentially that they made from the beginning of you working with them through the relationship? How about we start with Marshall and we'll go to Mark.
Yeah, so let's go back the way the model's intended to work, because I don't believe anyone does the bait and switch. I'm going to lay it out how it's intended to work. And you think about someone approaches you in your business and you go through the traditional stages of there's some indication of interest that sets some valuation range. Then there becomes a letter of intent to buy your business. Then it becomes a due diligence phase. And then there's an agreed upon number or an amount that ultimately gives rise to the transaction. So there's plenty of time and plenty of steps to be able to have the candid conversations about what expectations are. In the companies I've worked with in regards to private equity coming on board, most of the time, the private equity situations are either based on historical and future projected results, vision of the organization, what could I do if I had more funding or more resources, and then does it fit in the strategy about where we're headed? And if those questions are asked appropriately in private equity situations I've worked in, when the owners or the founders of the company have done what they said they would do and agreed on going in, typically the private equity group stands in the background and does what they said they would do, oftentimes providing funding or those resources. Now, if you take on funding and you don't do what you said you would do, you all of a sudden get some additional friends, not because anyone's bad people, because together we've agreed upon a valuation and an outcome. And so those businesses that have stayed true to doing what they said they would do going in have typically thrived and ultimately reached their outcome they wanted. And those who have not, in many cases, they still get the outcome. It's just not as much fun. So I think it's, I mean, ladies, one thing about our model, how it lends itself to private equity backed portfolios, Eric. In many cases, private equity type portfolios, if they're holding 10 or 12 businesses, usually you can rely on a couple of businesses to erase the other 10 that don't perform well. Our model lends itself to allowing every company inside portfolios to achieve the max level of success through the work that we do. So there's a couple examples of how it works.
Great, thank you. Mark, same question to you. Can you give us any examples of a company that you worked with that took on PE investment and how things changed, built, and scaled over time?
You know, well, thinking of one in particular where in the private equity group they came in, and you know, it was as Marshall said, and I do agree, is they agreed together. You know, the owner of the organization before the private equity group came in, and the private equity folks said, hey, here's what looks to be the best path for us to take to get to this valuation, to this place that we want to go. You know, the founder wanted the infusion of cash so he could grow faster. And they wanted to be in this market, the private equity group it did. And they said, hey, why don't we bring these two things together, which is your passion and ability to, you know, really reach out and touch people in a way that resonates with them. And we're going to bring an operational person in because operationally that was an area that, you know, this founder had not grown an organization and as rapidly as he wanted to. And so the private equity group brought in an operational, a COO. All, you know, the founder knew it. He was happy to have that in there. And that's the way they're going right now. It's an organization I coach in Colorado, and it's worked very, very well. But they've, you know, to Marshall's point, they had an agreed upon approach. They've stayed within the parameters that say, hey, things are on track, even through COVID, right? They had some changes, but they're still within the parameters that say we're doing the things we want to do. And it has worked very, very well.
Not too much different than a marriage, you know, setting expectations in the beginning, very clear, and it all works out, not hiding anything or changing anything after we say I do, right?
Yeah, I'm not going there.
I was talking to Mark.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I got a question from Amos in Kenya. It says, I'm an entrepreneur in EO, Kenya, and was exposed to Petra when Andy did a webinar for us. Does Petra coach companies in Africa? And if so, how does it work? Well, Amos, I will field this because I did part of that workshop. And I'll say, you know, like every company right now, Petra is pivoting. Our old model was if we were going to coach you, we were going to get on a plane, we were going to come in person and spend the day with you and then get on a plane and come home. And so in the past, going to Africa or going to the Middle East or anything like that would have been very, very expensive for us to do. So we did not have a lot of business like that. We have shifted to where we have a virtual model and we will work with your team in a virtual fashion where everybody is on Zoom, just like we are today. So in that way, COVID has been beneficial for Petra as we have shifted to be able to touch more people around the world. I just picked up a member in Pakistan, and I know we've been talking to other members in the Middle East, which is really exciting. Mark, Marshall, I want to throw it to you guys. Do you guys see any other things that Petra has done to pivot our model through COVID? Let's go Mark first, and then we'll throw it to Marshall. What are you seeing around Petra pivot?
Yeah, you know, it's funny is that, you know, the word pivot gets thrown around a lot, right? And means different things to different people. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I hear that word pivot, I still think of the old Friends episode where Ross and the gang are, yeah, exactly. They're moving that couch, and it's not pivot, but it's pivot, right? But I think at Petra, one of the things we do as an organization and coaching other organizations is to have, is to tell them to keep their eyes up and out, right? It's you can't be looking just right at your feet in front of you. You have to be looking out and up. And as COVID's, no one could have predicted COVID. No one did, right? Yet as an organization, one of the things that I think we've done a good job of is, being coaches, we kind of eat our own dog food. And we're looking up and saying, what is the new world of business? And it's new and exciting to be able to do, virtual stuff like this. The barriers to virtual delivery have come down. We've had Zoom, we've had other mechanisms. Matter of fact, one of my previous companies did just this. So it's been around for a long time, but as human beings, we hadn't adopted it as much. Now we are. So at Petra, we're doing the virtual stuff, but we're also doing workshops that are in webinar format. We're reaching out and seeing what resonates with others to help, do what we do, which is to positively influence millions and millions of people.
Great, thank you for that, Mark. How about you, Marshall? You're at home base in Franklin, Tennessee, where Petra is located. What are you seeing around how Petra is pivoting or changing or adapting through this whole process?
Well, let me say that actually virtual is not new for us. We had a virtual platform, but the market changed. And on Friday, the 13th of March, we all jumped in a room, and instead of it being 90-10, in person versus virtual, we flipped it. And now we're probably 95-5. I think we have 25 or 30 plannings next month in person as that starts to get. But some of the things, what are some of the things we're doing? Mark mentioned, we're doing workshops, and we're not just doing general workshops. We're doing workshops specific to the demands of what's out there right now in a way that keeps businesses dynamic and changing rapidly. We're doing webinars, and these are webinars specifically for business, but webinars for learning events and things like that. We're doing forum groups where that if you're a member of our Petra member family, we're doing forum groups to bring together those and help them solve challenges that they're having in the business. We have learning events. We have the ability to connect to a broader level of experts. So what we're finding is the time that we now don't travel, we're able to do more things that we would like to do that otherwise wasn't possible. So we have a huge network of experts along in the entrepreneurial and business world we're able to connect to. We'll ultimately be having conferences. We're doing speaking engagements. And many of our team members or our coaches are publishing either articles, and some of which have published books. So it's really the work outside of the work that's been most impressive about how we've been able to fill the opportunity of the time we have to help others.
Fantastic. Great comments by you too. Staying on the pivot topic, do either of you have any good stories that you can relay about either companies you're working with or other coaches working with companies as they pivot into what they're calling the new normal? Marshall, what you got? Any good pivot stories?
Yeah, I could take, let's take a home services company outside of Philadelphia, which required them to get inside a house to do bathtub measurements and installs, or be in person, face-to-face, in their selling activities. And they were able to use either iPads or telephones, technology, to do the measurements without having someone inside the house. They were able to switch to a virtual selling model in a way. And in fact, after nearly 3 decades in business, they had a record month in May. And so that's one example of, you look at a company that serves the hospitality industry, and they pivoted in a way that will make more environmentally friendly in regards to cleaning the supplies that they supply to hotels that go inside the rooms to be cleaned easier, or the fashion around face masks and things like that. So that's just a couple of examples. All businesses have, pivot means you go in a brand new direction. Some have been forced into a brand new direction. Some have taken advantage of opportunities they may have never reached without having a little nudge.
Great, thank you. Mark, how about you? Any good stories to share?
Yeah, we've all heard of the stories, if you will, of companies that go from one thing and all of a sudden, because of opportunity, a circumstance like this, they thrive. But I'm going to go along the lines of what Marshall was talking about a little bit, which is that I think all of us in our companies, there are things there that we can bring to the table that are helpful to people in changing environments. I don't know what they are, right? But sometimes you have to look hard and look at them differently than you ever did before. The nice thing about what we've been going through is that we all, are kind of shaken up a little bit, right? We couldn't, before we didn't quote unquote have enough time, right? We were going on about the business of what we were doing and only forced to look really hard if things were drastic. Now all of us are in a position where it's like, okay, we have, the opportunity to kind of look at, all right, what is it that we're doing and why and what matters? So what are those things that really do matter to the market? And it may be COVID related. It may be that, you kind of were, going along, doing okay in your business, but you're like, it wasn't really going at a speed or a direction that you really wanted. And this is an opportunity to look at that again. Okay, what part of the business really resonates with me and the market and our organization? One particular, you asked for a specific one. There was an alcohol company, so they made beer, and they were like, we know how to produce alcohol, and alcohol is a sanitizer. So they actually took their beer line production and turned it into a sanitizer production line. And so they took one element of their business, right? Alcohol. How do you produce alcohol? Instead of putting it into beer, they put it in something we can put all over our hands to help clean. And, that was just a very specific example. And they'll go back to making beer once they, get through this time frame. But they just took advantage of a need in the market that we all really needed. And they're making pallets and pallets of hand sanitizer until we all get back to drinking more beer.
Yeah. Did you ever stop drinking beer, Mark? I never stopped.
I didn't either, but I need hand sanitizer to go with it. So
sure.
Eric, can I add something on this?
Absolutely, Marshall.
So the two things going in the work we do, working doing strategic planning with companies, the two things that we sometimes had challenges getting enough attention to. One was cash management, and the other was spending enough time on strategy. To what Mark said, things were going along reasonably well. Cash seemed to be plentiful and readily available, and we didn't really need to change strategy a lot because things are going along well. I encourage all companies to whatever this mindset that caused us to have to think about pivots and what we could do differently, you're gonna have to find more habits and more rhythms about spending time thinking in that way, even before it's needed. So I would encourage everyone to make both of those topics top of their agenda. And then lastly on, your hand sanitizer, the Walgreens, the corner of Franklin Road and Linwood, hand sanitizer smells like moonshine. And I went to another place the other night and it smells like tequila. So those are some different flavors of hand sanitizer that exist today.
And how do you know so well what moonshine and tequila smell like?
Well, first of all, I was told that it smelled like moonshine, so I had to trust that the person that told me knew that whatever moonshine smells like. And then tequila is a good stay-at-home order refreshment.
Got it. Thank you. And I'll just add one thing. So I was in a planning with a company, and they needed a pivot, but they weren't sure quite how to do it. So we did an exercise, and I called it walking a mile in your customer's shoes. So what we did is we did a SWOT for them. So we all know SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we did an internal SWOT for the company. And then we looked at the industry that they were servicing, and it was financial services. And so we did a SWOT for the entire financial services industry. So what are their strengths right now? What are their weaknesses? What are their opportunities? And what are their threats? And we looked at the company I was working with. We looked at their strengths and their opportunities. And we said, how do they marry up with the financial services weaknesses or their opportunities? And is there a match? And if there wasn't a match, which there wasn't quite of a match, we said, okay, what can we pivot or move just a little bit in our strengths that could fulfill one of these opportunities? And what we figured out is Normally they do business with really, really big banks like Chase and Capital One. And we saw an opportunity that some of these smaller banks had that were doing much better in PPP to then go out and take market share away from some of these big guys. So they developed a whole campaign specifically to call on some of these local banks, and they ended up getting a $250,000 contract because of it. And it just really took them thinking about what their customers needed and how could they pivot their services just slightly to end up hitting it. All right, we got another question. This is from Cindy from Chattanooga, Tennessee, right down the street from your mom, Marshall. Post-COVID, our marketing budget has been slashed. Do you have any quick and dirty fixes to get marketing back up and rolling again? Who wants to tackle that one first? Don't everybody raise your hand at once.
I can take it.
Yeah.
All right, Marshall, go ahead. We'll come to Mark in a second.
Well, first of all, I'd like to understand, why did we determine that one of the first things we're going to do is slash our marketing budget? What is the most effective way in which we reach our audience? Now, if you run, it depends on which leads. Is it marketing led, sales supported, or is it sales led and marketing supported? But oftentimes when we go in defense mode, we start grabbing the cost levers and just pulling the cost levers, and we feel really good. We save some money. Now, I don't want to go all the way back into the, last depression where the whole, Post and Kellogg's, and, that's when Snap, Crackle, Pop came out, when they doubled down on, Kellogg's doubled down their budget versus Post shut down theirs. But I would ask, why do we go to marketing? Why do we cut out? And by the way, if you're going to go cut your marketing budget and your marketing is generating lead volume, how are you going to go replace that lead volume? So how can they get it back on track? Well, we still have to understand who's the core customer, what's the market we're going after, how do we choose to reach them, and what's going to give us the best opportunity to sell. Mark.
Great. Thank you, Mark. You got anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, as an ex-marketing guy, that it never gets out of your blood, right? It's part of the DNA. I agree fully with Marshall, which is, why are you slashing the thing that's going to lead you where you want to go, right? Which is to connect with the people who buy your products or services. That said, I do agree also with Marshall, is that's what organizations do, is they just look at numbers and they look at line items, and marketing is always a spend. It's always seen as a spend, never as a revenue generator, even though it's the precursor to it. That said, it's like, hey, you know what? Understanding that organizations need to figure out the best ways to spend their dollars that they have, and those dollars have been reduced. One of the things that is cheap and easy to do, and Marshall mentioned it earlier, we're doing some of this here at Petra, is to get into forum group type of discussions where you can get out of what I call being caught in your own centrifuge. All of us in our businesses know our industry. We know it well, right? And oftentimes great opportunities to reach out and touch people come from other areas. And so what I'd encourage somebody who's in this scenario is, can you get together a handful of people who you know, respect, admire, and do a little bit of a kind of forum roundtable and say, hey, you know what, we're looking to garner some more business here. What ideas might you have? And there's no bad idea, right? This is the, throw out all the crazy ideas and let's see what sticks to the wall here, because, the times are different and unique. And so, that might be a way to answer the question of, what might be kind of something different, is to get different perspectives from outside the industry that may be unique and not cost you a lot of money to do.
Yeah, that's great. And, from that question, I'm kind of taken back to February when we were all together in Franklin, and we had John DeJulius come and do a few hours with us, and we did customer journey mapping, right? And Morgan did such an amazing job playing the part of a CEO that was a little abusive. But what we did was we put ourselves in our customers' shoes and thought about, what are they feeling? What are they scared of right now? Where are they doing research? And then how do we put our company positioned in those places to give the answers that they're looking for? So that's something you might want to sit down with your team and think about, just like Marshall and And Mark said, who's our target market? And really get into their head. What are they feeling right now? And how do we empathize with them and end up being exactly where they are at this moment in time? And it looks like Cindy has commented again remember Cindy from Chattanooga. And Cindy says that she totally agrees. She begged them not to cut marketing budget, that they would be sorry, but they never listened to her. And this is just typical. And she has a follow-up question. She said, and this is to Marshall, I heard you talking about marketing and sales and leads. And what's the difference between a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead, Marshall?
Okay, well, it's almost in the definition of the title. A marketing qualified lead is, you think about marketing, it's in simplest term, it's either marketing as a noun or marketing as a verb. And when I say as a noun, we're doing branding and collateral and things you can hold, versus marketing as a verb, it's driving action. And if you think about what's the message that we're getting out to the public, we exist as a business to solve problems that others can't. And we have to use our marketing messaging to go after the market. And I want to make sure I fit this in as well. Growth in the foreseeable future will not become as a result of an expanded economy. Growth will come by taking market share from those who aren't willing to work as hard as you are to go achieve that. So when you take a marketing qualified lead, how do we cast that net? Think of a funnel, top of the funnel. What activities cast a net that draw interest in what it is we do as a business? And then once we get those in the top of the funnel, what are those additional activities of how we engage that audience that moves them down the funnel or forward in the marketing process? We call that nurturing. Nurturing leads to move them towards a handoff to sales. And once sales gets it, sales takes the next step to make it a sales qualified lead. So it starts as a marketing lead to a marketing qualified lead, oftentimes over to sales to a sales qualified lead. Now, sales can independently go be getting sales qualified leads that don't come through marketing either. And that come through the activities that sales professionals do that independent of marketing can go get on their own.
Great, fantastic. Cindy, I hope that answered your questions. If you have any more questions, please check out our website. We have the ability that you can put in any questions you might have. And Marshall's in the office today, so he'll be able to get back to you, or give us a call and maybe we can help you guys down the road. So this question is from Brian from Buffalo. He says, I am new to EO and I hear a lot of my forum mates talking about their core values. We currently don't have them, which is embarrassing. How would you suggest that I develop them and roll them out to the team? Mark, you want to take that one? You're a longtime EO guy.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely longtime EO guy. As they like to say is, you cut me, I bleed EO orange. That's how long I've been in. Great organization, great group. And, one of the things I'd tell Brian is that, to create core values is number one, every organization has them, right? To say you don't have them, they're there, you haven't brought them forth and you aren't living them and they're not alive in the organization. So I'd encourage you, it's self-serving a bit, but you can come hire Petra Coach, we'll help you. But in lieu of that, there are many resources out there you can go and look in different exercises. What I really would have you think about is, what is it that you and either your co-founders or the senior executive team, what is it that you can, look at within yourselves and say, these are the characteristics of us as people that matter most, right? What are the things that drive you, and really, spend some time around that. We do an exercise in our kickoff days when we work with members around this to really dive into them. It's more than we can do in a session like this. But it really dives into, figuring out what those characteristics are through telling the stories of the history within the organization or the history of the key people in the organization to get to those really key things, right? And they're not just the Boy Scouts of America things of, we all have integrity. right? Okay, those are table stakes. You got to get down to really what is it that matters and makes a difference, and are you willing to, to give up revenue streams, fire people because they don't live these core values? That's, what you got to get to. Not an easy process, but definitely an invaluable one once you get there.
Yeah, no, Mark, you mentioned living your core values a couple times there. Marshall, do you have any stories that you can think of members that you've worked with that have done a really good job living their core values?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, just so I happen to be back to sales again, you can have the greatest sales professional in the world, but if they're a disruptor to the team, their productivity can be super high. But if everyone ducks for their cubicles when he or she comes into the room, that's not good for anyone. And, values specifically there in your hometown, I don't know how I get different corrections. Anytime I say New Orleans, you said New Orleans, and so you live there. But so anyway, in your hometown of New Orleans, there's a company there who is very diligent. It's a construction engineering company who is very diligent to their values. And at first blush, if you will, you would think, wow, that kind of investment into behaviors can lend itself to that kind of an outcome, and it's overwhelming in a good way. And so they're an example of, they live those values every day, and they're very intentional with those values. And what I would say is, it's the handful of rules that exist when no one's there to tell you what to do, but it's also the culture that brings everyone together when things aren't smooth. So during this last crisis we went through, companies have been able to test their values because everyone's been on the edge in regards to how they're feeling. But one of our values, I've got your back no matter what. Even when you don't agree on things or things are tough, it's nice to know that that person next to you undoubtedly has your back. So that's just one, there's plenty. I mean, we've worked with, several hundred, if not 400 companies or so in 2,500 planning sessions. We can give you core value stories all day long. By the way, the good side, and then also where that Mark said it, you have to be willing to exit someone from the company not being in alignment with the values, even if you possibly take an economic hit as a result.
Awesome. Thank you. Got another question, and this is a question for everybody. It's from Mitchell from Duluth. What is your favorite part about coaching companies? What is your favorite part about coaching companies? How about we start with you, Mr. Mark?
I was going to say, how about we start with you, Mr. Eric? You didn't you go first. You haven't been able to, so you go first. We're going to turn it back.
All right, sure. So my favorite part is I am not a handy person. I can't build anything. In fact, that's not true. I can build stuff. It's just always wrong. So my favorite story is one time it took me like 4 hours to put Chester drawers together, and my roommate came home and he realized that I put them all inside out. So none of the drawers would actually slide in. So I can't build anything. So my favorite part about coaching companies is that we walk into a room and we basically build out a period over the next 90 days of everything that has to happen to move the company forward. And I'm the person facilitating that. So while I can't really build anything with my hands, with the Petra methodology, I'm able to walk in a room and collectively, with a group of really smart people, we're able to build out an entire quarter for a company. And then you put those quarters together and you're building out years of success for a company. So my inability to build things is what I like so much about Petra and about coaching, because it gives me the ability to work with companies to build something very special.
That's cool. I did not know you're not a builder. I'll remember that, not to ask you to build out IKEA drawers or anything for me out here.
Perfect. Well, that's the win of this session right now, is you're not going to ask me to build anything. So see you later.
All right. And Eric's out. I think for going back, and I'll answer next, is I think for me, the thing I really love about coaching and what we do here at Petra and with scaling up is at the core, I spend a lot of time. One of the things that we drive home a lot is really understanding organizationally what your why is. If you go to the Simon Sinek Start With Why, I spent years working on that and understanding that for myself. And my core why, when I come back to it, is I'm a sharer. I like sharing knowledge, information, and experiences, whether they're mine or others, so that other people can grow. And, here at Petra, we're all about positively influencing, millions and millions, 10 million human beings. That's our BHAG. That's what we are here to do. And so it's very much in alignment with who and what I am. So I love going out there and be able to share, the scaling up process and other things that I've learned in my business career, and then get to work with great people like you guys and the other Petra coaches to share those experiences too. And we can have those moments where you're able to impart information, knowledge, processes, whatever it is, so that somebody else can go in and go on further, faster, whatever. That to me is just incredibly rewarding and something that I found valuable in my early career, having mentors and really taking that approach in what we do here. So, being able to participate alongside these people and be a help in their journey is what I love.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Marshall?
This one's fairly easy. The ability to impact human beings, not because that's what I just happen to be aligned with what the direction of Petra Coach is, but I found myself in business late in the career of feel like I was trapped inside whatever company I was in. And it felt like it limited my span of influence. And I ultimately would like to be a motivational speaker, even if you never see me, even if I'm hidden behind a curtain. It's not about celebration of me. It's about every day we have the ability to impact lives in every interaction. And our ability to be able to get in front of dozens of companies and hundreds, if not thousands of people on a weekly or monthly basis is significant. And so many times throughout my journey and my career, I'll be honest, I didn't always get development or access to the things I would like to have seen. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But now I have the ability, not just me, but the connection with the rest of you, we have the ability to inspire change and take people to places they otherwise could not have gotten on their own and make them believe or get them to believe in themselves in a way. And once you get them over that hump and they see that they can do what otherwise they thought was the unthinkable, and oh, by the way, be the person behind the scenes that's that friend and confidant that they otherwise may not have to turn to, is about the most rewarding thing that you could ever do in your career. So I'm forever blessed, forever grateful to be called a coach and be able to impact others. But we could give you thousands of stories, and that's it, Eric. Thanks for asking, and it's deeply ingrained in my heart, and I'm glad I get to do it.
Great.
And I love, Marshall, that you pulled out a Tom Landry quote there. That is perfect.
Thank you for sharing. Don't necessarily care about Tom Landry or the Cowboys, but
You're in good company. Come on.
Well,
Marshall,
you, me, and the rest of the country, right? America's.
I say Marshall and I love them, so that's why you're saying you're in good company. You're on the wrong side on this one.
All right, so we got a serious question here, and I think it's important that we take it on. This comes from Bill in Denver. It says, with all of the social unrest going on, I'm really challenged on what I should do as a white business leader with lots of team members that are people of color. I am not a racist in any way, but I feel frozen. Can you give me some advice here on what the first thing I should do is and the best way to handle this situation? Either one of you guys want to tackle that?
I'm prepared to.
Okay, go ahead, Marshall. Thank you.
This is advice we give leaders out there, all leaders, by the way. Listen, and not just listen to understand. Educate everyone. Educate yourself, educate others. Evaluate your business model and make adjustments if you need to make adjustments. And so this can be new to some businesses, and just making the effort to make sure that you're being aware. That's the way that we've been coaching the leaders that we work with.
So listen to understand, evaluate, make adjustments if you need to. And what was the final point?
Listen to understand, but educate next. Educate yourself. We have a series of 10 books that we can say has been recommended readings. That if someone wants to reach out after the webinar, we can send you those books. And then becomes the evaluate to determine if any changes are necessary, and then take necessary action. But action doesn't have to wait on evaluating and understanding. Action can take place right now, today.
Yeah. And Mark, is there anything you want to add about how you're coaching your companies through this right now?
Well, I think it's one of those things. I think Marshall, hit on a couple of the key points is really, first taking that step back and saying, okay, somebody said this and I liked it, is, assume that you are the problem to start. So if I assume I am the problem, right, even if I don't believe I am, if I assume I am, then I'm listening to figure out in a different way. I think a lot of times we all go into different situations. I won't necessarily pick on this one and just say, oh, that's not me. Well, you're turning off that openness to possibility. So to the extent you can, be vulnerable and courageous and say, okay, I'm part of the challenge. What can I do to be part of the solution? And I believe firmly in educating yourself, and reach out, in this situation that we're in with the social unrest and injustice that is there. If you're of a class that is not in there, then, go speak with people and spend time, and don't come in at it as, hey, I'm going to solve the problem. Come in and say, I'd really like to understand, because I don't. And I think it's that approach of a little bit of humility and humbleness about, coming in. And especially leaders of businesses, because oftentimes as leaders, we come into a situation saying, oh, we're going to get the answers. We're going to find solutions. We're going to drive. And I think in situations where, like this, it's better for us to say, I want to understand. I want to be supportive. I want to be helpful. How can I be that? Educate me, help me to understand, versus I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And the more you can do that, I think the farther we'll go. And, and understand too, that this is a challenge that's come about over a long period of time. It's going to take us time to get solutions. Be part of the solutions, however that may be. Go ask people, talk to them.
That's fantastic. Be part of the solution. That's great, Mark. I really appreciate that. We got time for one more question, and this is from Tanya from Mobile, right down the road from me. Tanya says, my company and I participated in one of your workshops for Petra, and I think we would like some more. Could I get some more details, or what would it be for just a coach to come out for a day with our team? Marshall, you want to talk about kind of what next steps are from a workshop and how engagements might work?
Yeah, so we have our workshops listed on our website, and maybe the person driving the event today will share, but petracoach.com. And then if you look under the COVID-19 section or workshop section, you'll see a list of our workshops and webinars. And we are basically keeping those at the forefront. Some are specific to COVID, like Main Street Lending, Payroll Protection Plan, Return to Work, Back on Track. And then otherwise, there's workshops out there as well. As far as getting someone to come on site, we offer free coaching sessions that are limited, call them 15 to 30 minutes, in which that we can understand what the needs are of your business, scope an engagement, and then come out. So I would encourage you, we call it a raised hand. I'd encourage you to raise your hand if you have interest, and let's get you on the phone with one of our coaches and talk about what it is you're looking to do in your business. And then we can help craft that solution that works for you, even if it's an online workshop, all the way through in-person engagement. You want to add to that, Eric?
Yeah, I think through COVID, we have been able to show Petra to a lot more people in a lot of different ways. And I think that's fantastic. And then I think it just kind of depends where in your business life cycle you are and what solutions Petra might have, but we don't know those until you give us a call and you take advantage of that 30-minute session and just kind of lay it all out and let us understand what's going on in your business, and then we can provide some solutions. Mark, any thoughts on that, or any final thoughts as we close out this Coach's Corner?
No, I will say when I saw it go up in the chat window here, so for folks that are on here, you can get the links there to the different workshops and to the free coaching. So I just encourage you to go over there and seek out those resources. We're here. This is what we do, right? Is work with others. So as you said, well, Eric, we can't understand how we might be able to help until you reach out to us. So just encourage everybody to reach out. We're a pretty friendly group, so give us a call, send us an email, reach out in whatever way you can.
We're not all Cowboys fans. This is a bad representation. We're not all Cowboys fans. Isn't that right, Marshall?
That's right.
So guys, thank you so much for joining us today for Coach's Corner. We are here to serve you. We appreciate you guys very much. And we will see you next week right here. Same bat channel, same bat time.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.